Welcome back to Ahead of the Curve. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Teed. Today we're going to be talking about stretching smarter, safe elongation for scoliosis. And this is a really special topic. I know I say that a lot, but in my personal opinion, I believe 80% of the issues that scoliosis brings about can be resolved or alleviated by spinal elongation. With the caveat with safe spinal elongation. There's some ways that you can do elongation with scoliosis that can create more trouble than is beneficial. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be delving deeper into why certain techniques like inversion tables and dead hangs aren't the greatest for scoliosis. And I'm going to be offering a free live 2-part training on elongation. So stay tuned for the details for that. Also check the show notes to get enrolled in that so that you don't miss out on learning all you can about spinal elongation. I'm going to be giving you a little routine to follow, and there's going to be a little bit of a competition. So there will be a training on a Sunday and a training on a Thursday, and in between, you'll be working on that routine so that you can actually feel the benefits of spinal elongation. And then at the second training, I'm going to teach you how to incorporate elongation into your everyday life. So you don't want to miss out on this training. It is the Curve Lengthening Lab. That's the name of the training. So get yourself on the list to get the details, the links, and get your booty in there. So spinal elongation is actually something that my clients in my small group coaching are the most consistent with because it's something very quick that you can do. It is effective. You can feel the results right away. And it's just easy to weave in throughout your day that you don't have to have set aside a bunch of time to do it. I would say probably 95% of my collective clients, that is the thing that they stick to the most, and they usually do it twice a day. So one of the best descriptions and visuals that I've given people to kind of picture and imagine why spinal elongation is so beneficial for scoliosis is the image of a slinky. If you picture what happens to the coils of a slinky when you pull them apart from each other, so if you hold on to each end of the slinky and then you pull your hands apart from each other, the coils go from being small and circular to long and lengthened and almost closer to a straight line. And that's essentially what happens with spinal elongation with your scoliosis. So if you just think about what happens and how it feels when you're slumped and sinking in on yourself, how it's very compressive, and then kind of visualize what happens as you lift yourself up a bit taller and try and lift the rib cage further away from the pelvis. Usually, it not only feels better, but it also makes that curve or the rib prominence appear flatter and more lengthened instead of protruding out quite as much. So a couple of reasons why spinal elongation feels so good is first of all, it helps to create more space. So spinal elongation is the first step for standing corrections, seated corrections, corrections laying down on the floor. We want to create the space first for the different translations and rotations to come into play. Because if you just go and you're trying to bring yourself into a corrected alignment by just kind of shearing your hips over, your pelvis over, your ribs over towards midline before you create the space, it's extremely uncomfortable and it can create some issues. So, you're essentially kind of running the risk of like butting up against yourself when you're trying to perform corrections without elongating first. It also helps improve mobility. So if you are, again, hanging out in your curve and just really sinking in on yourself, like just go ahead and try that. Just relax and slump down. And I want you to try and rotate in this position and look over your shoulder using your rib cage too. You can't go very far. So when you elongate first and then you go and rotate right and left, you should be able to look a bit further and move more freely without kind of coming up against a roadblock with your movement. And then finally, it helps to decompress your spine. So even if you don't have scoliosis, elongation can feel really great and is beneficial. So a form of elongation is performed on people who have had like a disc herniation and that they have pain running down their leg. They get something in physical therapy called traction. And that's where you lay on a table and you have like a harness around your pelvis, and the harness is attached to like kind of a cable pulley system, and it pulls your pelvis further away from your head. And that's trying to create spinal elongation on a different scale. It's a passive spinal elongation versus active. And a lot of the passive spinal elongations are ones that I'm generally not a fan of. The more active spinal elongations tend to be safer and more comfortable. So they're longer lasting when you're an active participant in that elongation versus if you're passively being elongated by an external force. So specifically why it's beneficial for scoliosis, it reduces that asymmetrical compression that is happening, which I know that you feel in your body. And a lot of times you can actually see it in your body. So if you get a picture in your swimsuit from behind or an open back shirt or dress, so if your scoliosis is significant enough and if you're resting in your curve, sometimes you will see a skin fold occur. And then on one side, and then on the other side, there is no skin fold. It's more smooth. That is an indication of an asymmetrical compression happening in the spine. It's just showing up on the outside of your body visually. When you go and you elongate, it helps to rehydrate your fascia and your intervertebral discs. So your discs need compression and expansion. So compression and elongation is really helpful to rehydrate those discs and provide a flush of something called synovial fluid into that area, into the different joints of your body. That happens as well with compression and decompression. It also helps with proprioception and neuromuscular control. Those are some big fancy words. So proprioception is feeling where you are in space. Also just like having a really solid map in your brain of your body. And there's certain parts of your body with scoliosis that your brain doesn't recognize as much as the other parts of your spine or your curve. And when you're doing an elongation, it can help to rebuild that proprioception and that body awareness, which helps to reduce pain. Next, let's talk about why not all elongation methods are safe or created equal. So, two of my least favorite forms of spinal elongation are inversion tables and dead hangs. And these methods, they create an extreme traction effect. So there's no control with it. With an inversion table, you have a little bit more control than you do with a dead hang, but not much. And what happens with that extreme traction effect, it can lead to something called rebound effect. And rebound effect is something you don't want to have happen. And a lot of people that I've worked with, they see these advertisements, or somebody that they know has tried it out and they swear by it. And then they have them try it and they jump on and they try it out. And what happens is you're already tight to begin with. You already have some compression and irritation in your back. And then when you go and you do this really extreme, it's like a rubber band, really extreme stretch, really extreme decompression, your spine ends up contracting even tighter after you get out of that position. So when you are reloading your spine, you come off the inversion table, you come off the pull-up bar from the dead hang, and then everything really tightens up in reaction to that and can create a lot of extra pain. Another reason why those aren't great is you might have an undiagnosed spondylolisthesis. And they're super common with scoliosis, and a lot of times they don't really create much of an issue until they do. And those are two ways to irritate that spondylolisthesis. So what that is, in simple terms, is when one of your vertebrae kind of slide past the other. And essentially, that happens to some degree all throughout the spine. With scoliosis, you kind of have these little, slips here and there throughout the spine because of the curve. Your vertebrae aren't stacked perfectly on top of each other. So usually when they create an issue is when that slippage is extreme, and when it's like really tugged on quite a bit by just an unsupported elongation, like a dead hang or an inversion table. Another reason why I don't love these is the body doesn't really have time to integrate the elongation. So this makes, like, even if you do have a positive effect from that, it tends to be really temporary, and then it often is a bit counterproductive. You want to be an active participant in that elongation so that once you come out of that full elongation, you're able to replicate that as much as you can throughout the day and begin to build some body awareness, muscle memory, and it's a longer lasting effect. The another reason why the extreme methods of elongation are kind of counterproductive is the nervous system interprets that really fast change as a threat. And then as a result, your muscles tighten up. It's the same thing that happens when you go and get a massage. And instead of your massage therapist, easing in to more and more pressure throughout the duration of your massage, they go in really quickly through the tissues as deep as possible and don't really have that permission yet from your body. So slower and with more ease is better than fast and super aggressive across the board. Pretty much across the board. So now I'm going to very quickly talk about some safe ways to lengthen and elongate. And we will go into much more detail in the training on these techniques because I'm not going to be getting up and demonstrating them in a podcast. And also, I want you to be able to walk yourself through it with me, and we can have a little discourse about it. So make sure you're signed up. So there's a couple of different ways that I recommend starting with elongation. The first one is just using a wall. You face the wall and you stretch your arms up the wall as high as you can. And what you're trying to do is lift your rib cage as far away from your pelvis as possible so you can let your shoulders shrug up while you're doing that. You can get even more benefit from it when you're keeping your curve in mind. So I'll teach you in the training how to make some adjustments for that. And when we're doing that elongation, you're trying to lift the entire rib cage, not just the front of the rib cage. Everybody forgets about the back of the rib cage. You want that to lift away from the pelvis as well, because that's where you really feel the decompression of the back and a lot of pain relief. And then there's a whole series that you can do facing the wall, working on that elongation and beginning to build some muscle memory. The second way, which I should have said first, so there's a little bit of a progression of these three ways to elongate. The first one is unassisted, so not using a wall, not holding on to anything. You're just out and about living life, and you are feeling compressed in your body. And there's a way that you can self-elongate without needing any tools or extra support. And the best way to do it when you're first starting is sitting, because you have an anchor point with your hips on your seat. So that is one end of your slinky there. And then your other anchor point is facilitated by you. So just bringing your hands on to the side of the rib cage, kind of cupping the side of the rib cage and using the hands to actually lift the whole rib cage away from the pelvis. And you can allow the shoulders to shrug up, and then you just take several breaths in that position, trying to breathe every direction. And then the idea is once you take a break, you take your hands off the rib cage and you try and hold that without the support of the hands. And then you relax the shoulders a little bit, still trying to keep the elongation. And then you see how long you can remain in that uplifted position without the support of your hands. And then the The third way is by holding on to a pull-up bar or a stall bar or even a yoga strap overhead, and then allowing yourself to kind of sink into your feet, sink into your hips, and you can do it that way. So those are all forms of supported elongation that are really good starting points that can give you a little taste of what it is to elongate. But again, I'm going to go into much more detail and give you a written out plan to follow for our Curve Lengthening Lab in March. So it is March 9th and the 13th are the 2 days of the training. Make sure that you sign up for that so that you can get all the details when they get sent out. I want to see you there. I want to meet some of you, and I want to meet some of you. I want to meet all of you who are listening. It would be great to see your faces, get to know you a little bit, and have a fun experience together. So that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, learning all about elongation, how to elongate safely, and how to avoid some trouble with elongation with dead hangs and inversion tables. Until next time, stay well and stay ahead of the curve.